man. I had no idea this was the first episode, man. I would have brushed my hair for this. All right, let's roll.
This is the first ever episode. Don't worry. But yeah, I
Love it.
mean, pumped to have you on. I'm excited to learn a little bit more about yourself, some of your SDR tactics, and hear some of your advice you have for the up and coming SDRs out there, SDR leadership, looking for some inspiration. So for everyone watching or reading, Eric is a sales development pro. He's served as player and coach for a number of years while sharing his journey, his advice, and humor on LinkedIn along the way. For anyone who follows your content, it's quite clear that you've been in sales for some time now. But what some people actually don't know is that you started your career in the fitness industry.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of good overlap between these two fields. But I mean, I'd like to hear a little bit more from yourself. What do you think is probably the major life lessons you learned while working in that industry and you transferred over into sales?
Yeah, I'm resisting from bringing out my smart aleck remarks, so I'm going to hold those down. But needless to say, yeah, I started fitness as every young 20-year-old in California did, right? Like everyone that had a cell phone and social media. But no, I had a lot of fun developing a lot of what I consider business acumen, and it's not just understanding what the prospect does; it's actually understanding what the human does. EQ evaluation, just understanding where people shine, where people are reluctant, just be able to kind of analyze, so to speak. Nothing's more awkward or uncomfortable than having a conversation with somebody else that's going through a life transition, especially weight loss, for example.
Yep.
So being able to be compassionate and understanding, direct with your questions, and an overall understanding of what they're going through. But as you can probably tell, a lot of that merges into what you do in outbound or any sort of role really in sales. It's understanding the prospect because it's not about you, right? Like who gives a damn who is on the other side of the phone? It's all about prospect. So having that understanding and ability to analyze and appreciate, sympathize, be compassionate, insert, rinse, and repeat.
The human, right? At the end of the day,
Shoot, there you go. Yeah, there you go.
right? So I'm curious, what kind of led you down the path to sales then? How'd you get into it?
Man, great question. I was living in San Diego at the turn of COVID, and it was right across the street from the ServiceNow headquarters. So I was training a number of VPs and people who could afford me at the time, and at that kind of movement between like, hey, gyms are shutting down, physical therapy is kind of becoming more of a wayside. They're like, man, you gotta start dialing the phones. As you can tell, I've got a face for the phones, so it just merged very, very well. And they didn't actually give me a job at ServiceNow. I was unqualified, which is the irony of it. But I was able to find a company that was able to gift me with no prior experience, and the rest is history, man. Like I'm absolutely thrilled to be in this world despite current circumstances, but it's been a blast.
Absolutely, especially in the past couple of years, right? Everything's just insane, going a million miles an hour.
Yeah, yeah. So to anybody that's jumped in at this time, we've missed the gold rush, but it's still a whole lot of meat on the bone. But needless to say, yeah, this is where the 1%ers shine.
Absolutely. Yeah. On that note, actually, I guess, right now on LinkedIn, you're probably seeing sprinkled everywhere those unfortunate, layoff posts. I guess what would be like some actionable advice you have for any reps out there looking to break into their new SDR BDR role and wanting to get closer to that 1%?
Yeah, that's a great question. So for those who are trying to break in, it is Fort Knox. Now it's difficult, but it's not impossible. The biggest advice I can give, and the cliche for anybody listening to this or watching this via LinkedIn, is connect, connect, connect. There are people like myself, like Dom, and a number of others that I can point you to that are selfless enough to give you the kind of pointers, the ABCs of how we broke into the industry or what makes individuals successful into it. The biggest overarching theme is do the job that you're going out for, right? Show up, show off, cold call the people. Don't be afraid to go and knock on somebody's door. If you want to interview, don't rely on the easy apply. Going out there and do the job. Prospect, find out some relevance, find out the pain points, how you can supersede those, where you are confident in not even the lack of tenureship that you have, but the abilities that you've got, what I would call applicable experience. Capitalize on that, man. They're gonna eat that up. As sales leaders like myself, I always looked at applicable experience. Those who knock on the door are going to be answered first, rather than those who are waiting for me to invite them in.
That was perfect. I honestly couldn't have put it better myself. That's awesome. What's your take on personalized outreach for like hiring teams specifically when you're trying to get an SDR role?
Oh man, 101 case value, if nothing else, right? So we're seeing a big transition for those who are naive to it or unaware. the spray and pray is dead, long gone, dead.
Yep.
Bye, sayonara. So
Too bad.
don't rest on your laurels of here's the template that somebody gave me to be successful. Understand what Dom likes compared to what I like. Utilize those core components to actually introduce yourself and to either bring some comparables, relevancy, insert verb, noun, whatever Mad Lib you want to at that time, and capitalize. Get good at being good, and that sounds like a cliche, but really it's about confidence and being able to utilize that.
Yeah. There's plenty of ammo out there on LinkedIn, on company websites. You can use whatever. You can even go on their Facebook profiles.
Yep. I mean, if the other thing is utilize other connections, right? Like we're all core connected. Even though I don't work with you, this is the first time interacting. I felt like I knew you before we even jumped on this, just because of the interaction. So if you want to get to Dom, knock on my door. Be like, hey man, what's the T over there? I'm on Snapchat, or excuse me, I'm on LinkedIn like a 13-year-old on Snapchat. So I'm sure there's some sort of like core compliance. I tell you what's going on, or at least give you some snippets, and then open up some doors. So they call it multi-threading for those who don't know.
Multi-threading is great. Multi-threading is how I make a living.
Yeah, exactly.
But what about personalized outreach, right? What about cold call personalized outreach? Do you have any tips for reps looking to get more personalized on that front? I know emails, big place where you can get personalized there, right? But how do you actually do it on cold calls without wasting your time?
A good friend of mine calls it reading the tea leaves, right?
Mm.
Nobody pays attention to themselves as they're having a conversation in person, ironically. So if I'm talking to you and prior to this recorder coming in, I'm completely absent-minded to how I was interacting. Be that through the phone. There's something intimidating, and I get it. Once you pick up the dial and you press send or whatever the dial tone is, something comes over us naturally. We get protective. We kind of get in this little bubble of I've got to fit this. Dude, be yourself. Be yourself. Because ultimately speaking, I hire people and they've reached out to me. I don't care what they're saying; it's how you say it, right? Like
tonality, right?
Yeah, tonality, exactly. Are you answering my questions, or do you have an agenda? Am I answering yours? Like, what's the combativeness? Are you talking up to me? Are we talking to each other? There's a lot that goes into it, but ultimately the underlying factor is just be yourself. Just try to have a conversation, no matter what the structure of the call is.
Yeah, and like I said before, be human, right? We're talking to humans at the end of the day. So don't try to be a robot. Don't try to be a know-all. Just do what you can to actually talk.
Because we'll sniff that out real quick, right? Like
100%.
Hey, I've tried to jump in those shoes. When I first started cold calling and I was calling up the C-suite, man, my hand was shaking like like a little chihuahua. Man, there's no doubt. And I still get butterflies, no doubt.
Yeah.
However, at the end of the day, I remember they have the exact same insecurities, the exact same stresses, the exact same anxieties, different components and different outliers. But of course, they're just human.
Yeah. Exactly. I got a question about SDR leadership specifically. I'd like to get your thoughts on this, but what are the most common challenges you probably see SDRs have in their first 60 days, and how would you, recommend addressing them from a leadership's point of view?
I love this. This has been a topic on the top of my mind. Ironically, as I'm in between. I think we have it backwards, and I'll say we, and I'll take ownership too. We tend to, in the first 30, 60, 90 days of the ramping period, whether they're a vet or they're new in the industry, we teach them the product.
Mm-hmm.
This is what you're going to sell. The first thing is foremost, let's call a spade, right? SDR is not selling. We are driving generation. We're driving interest. We are bringing relevancy. We're bringing awareness. That's not selling. So again, when we give them a product, they're going, cool, this iPhone is blue. They're like, okay, cool, let me go out and sell it. I think it's so ass backwards, man. I think we need to teach them about the prospect, about the market, about the community, about what we do, who we are, what they are, what makes them tick. Capitalize on that as leaders. I was just saying that what's their motivation? Is it intrinsic or extrinsic motivation? Like all those components need to be capitalized in the first 30, or at least addressed. Let's not call it capitalized, addressed in the first 30, 60, 90. After that, sprinkle in the product. Because if I can understand what the prospect wants, I'm going, oh crap, hey, we do that. Okay, okay, cool. That's how I think it's best to learn, rather than going, all right, square peg, round circle. All right, see what we got here. Like, let's do this. Like, it doesn't
work.
I'm passionate about this. I'm a big component about understanding people, prospect, market, and product.
I agree 100%. I remember when I was actually first starting out my own my old SDR role, cold calling for the first time, first thing we learned was about the product. We didn't do too much with personas. We,
Yeah.
probably should have done more there, but I'm always thinking, is it something that's inevitable? Are reps gonna always try to attach themselves to the product knowledge first, even if you try to give them some persona-based information first and try to give them the keys to the kingdom in terms of, problem-solving land?
Hell
Because
yeah,
maybe
you're
it's
as good as your
easier.
product, right? That's a cliche that everybody says. Like,
Yeah.
you're as good as your product. Like, can you sell what you believe in? Like, I don't even know what I'm selling. So I can, like, there are these like toxic traits. It's like, no, man, like you're breeding into awareness, your relevancy. Like, if you switch the agenda, right? And that's, we can even go down that rabbit hole about like how to drive actual succession and conversion is,
We can if you want.
needless to say, yeah, that is a tangent for another time. But needless to say, if you just switch the agenda, take away the component of that, like, what am I trying to do, and more on how am I doing it, right? Understanding persona, EQ, all that stuff that I love, all those fun buzzwords. I, I think then the world's your oyster, man. Like that's where the one percenters thrive.
Absolutely. If you don't mind, I'd actually like to take, a step back and kind of go back in time for a minute. Um, you started your sales career in a mature organization with built out teams, processes, playbooks. But then you made a switch over to the startup realm as a
Hmm.
founding AE and head of go-to-market at Falcon.
Hmm.
So I think this is relevant for this topic, obviously, as starting up in a new organization, learning the ropes, talk tracks, and whatnot. But how do you think joining an early stage startup impacts your career path? Would you recommend it for others looking to do the same thing?
Yeah, I always like to joke that I had a full head of hair before I joined the startup world. Um, it's there's a lot of cliches, and I'll probably dive down that rabbit hole. But you get a PhD in a week, right, of selling,
Yeah,
and or a month or whatever. Um, you do everything. You put more pressure. I'll speak from my own personal experience. You put more pressure because you want to do everything because it's a team of 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, whatever that sub 100 is. You become real close. You can become real tight, and you almost identify with that said startup, or at least I'll speak from my own experience, right? Um, Ironically enough, to identifying with the product that you're selling. There's one. Do I recommend it? Absolutely. Is it made for, I don't want to call it a different breed, but I feel like those that thrive in larger organizations do it really, really well. Those that thrive in startups are missing a screw, but they do it really, really well.
yeah,
Um, it's it's also the point in time, right? Right now we're dealing with a very saturated, very unshaky, or excuse me, shaky market, which makes it very, very difficult to generate drive, messaging, interest, awareness, whatever that is, funnel. Um, but I tell you, man, I almost get a better thrill or like a better success out of booking that first meeting from that you built, that you put your sweat and tears in, that you've had some shakes and nights and those uneasy sleeps, and there is something to be said about that. Do I suggest everybody? Heck yeah. Just like I suggest everybody to go serve tables for at least a month to understand, like when you don't have that name brand next to it, it's a whole different
stuff.
it's a whole different component, but the reward is tenfold. Absolutely.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm still in it right now. I've been in
Yep.
the startup world. I've been in the early stage startup world for 4 months now, 5 months. I can't even count anymore. It felt like I've been here for 3 years, honestly.
Yeah. And
And
in, out, in between, what messaging's resident, like it's
yeah,
crazy the kind of learning that you get or the education that you're voluntold
yeah,
immediately.
exactly. And velocity helps. I mean, I was using so to say formula script for my cold calls week one that now I just don't even touch anymore because it
Yeah.
wasn't resonating with our ICP. And so now, you make a pivot almost every single week into some different type of marketing, messaging, sales tactic, whatever it may be.
Yeah,
It's
and
awesome.
to that point, I think that's the most frustrating point, actually. And Will said, I think there's a point when you're feeling rock solid. You've got that talk track that is resonating. You're generating funnel. Next week, it just doesn't land worth a damn, and you're sitting there going, "WTF?" Like now I'm back to the drawing board, and I've got to go back and completely rip and replace. And so, yeah, there
Yeah.
is something to be said on that one. That resiliency, that grits, patience. But man, yeah, it is
Patience
tenfold
is
when
a
you get that.
virtue. Yeah. You
Yeah,
need a lot of you need a lot of patience. Trust me.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
So I know we're wrapping up things here. I do want to ask you one more question. If you don't mind sharing, obviously, the SDR world is so big. A lot of things are changing. A lot of things are changing for yourself, Eric. So I'd like to know a little more about what's next for you. What's the next bone that you really want to just grab and gnaw on and just not let go until you're done?
It's $1 million question. I want to be a LinkedIn influencer, dude. No.
Don't we all, right?
No. I've now dabbled in the early stage startups. I love it. I'm absolutely addicted to it. I don't think I could ever go back. However, I've now dabbled quite extensively in consulting, coaching, and building.
Hmm.
And so I am kind of merging with the idea of going out on my own.
Yep.
I hate that cliche. But needless to say, and really offer my services to early stage startups, legacy companies, kind of building, I call it like a dial for hire, right?
Yeah.
To build a process, pressure test it, and deploy that one so it's tangible results upon that said. So that's where I'm kind of merging. That's what I've been doing for the last couple of months. I've had a lot of fulfillment with that. So we'll see where the road takes me. But needless to say, it is one of those that maybe going back to a full time. I don't know. It's $1 million question. So we'll see
Anything
very
could
soon.
happen.
Yeah,
Anything could happen,
we'll see
right?
very soon.
Yeah, well, it's been a pleasure chatting with you. Anybody you want to shout out, or even if you just want to shout out your own LinkedIn page here, or, tell
Shoot.
people where they can find you.
Gosh, yeah. My LinkedIn is, like I said, I'm like a 13-year-old on Snapchat. I'm there more than I should be. But yeah, first name, last name. I don't even know how to put it. But yeah, there's quite a few people that I'm connected with. You'll see, Lydia Hutchinson, Nick Phillips, Tom Slocum, Chris Ciunici, a lot of my good friends in there. But again, it's more about generating for the masses of just top of funnel awareness, breaking through the noise, being able to stand out, show up and show off, and all that core components through that.
Love it. Love it. Well, thank you again, Eric. It's been a pleasure here. And yeah, talk to you soon.
All right, buddy. Thanks so much.